Welcome to the Patriotic Pulpit. Let's talk about censorship and the government. The news has, of course, come out in the last few days about Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, the owner of Meta, that company that owns Facebook and Instagram. And he tells us plainly, writes a letter actually to Congress and tells us that the government, aka at this time the Biden-Harris administration, has pressured Facebook to censor information as it goes to the American people. Now, in reality, let's note something else, and that is that these tech companies are actually in league with the government. The government has given them a shield of protective custody, shielding them from lawsuits because of things that might be posted and people are not able to sue Facebook, Instagram, so forth, because the government has created a protective shield. So in reality, according to the Supreme Court, these companies are actually part of the government, and it's not simply a free enterprise. A lot of people make the mistake here. I encourage you to read Vivek Ramaswamy's book called Woke Inc., in which he explains and shows us that if the Supreme Court, United States law, shows us that when the federal government provides a protective shield for a particular company, such as a tech company, a communications company, shielding them from lawsuits, that they actually join together and become quasi-government. So Facebook, Instagram, Meta, the company of Mark Zuckerberg, actually is a quasi-government organization. And Mark Zuckerberg's letter to the Congress yesterday shows us some interesting things. And I want to read a couple of comments from the Hill that shows us exactly what has been going on. The letter addressed to House Judiciary Committee Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg acknowledged there is a lot of talk right now about how the United States government interacts with media companies like Meta, which owns Instagram and Facebook. In the letter sent Monday, that's the latest in the committee's investigation into how tech companies work with the federal government and make content moderation decisions. Zuckerberg said Meta has produced thousands of documents for the committee's investigation, will make employees available for interview. Furthermore, the letter was shared to the House Judiciary Committee GOP's Facebook page, and it is said there's a big win for free speech. Well, not so fast. Mark Zuckerberg just admitted three things. Number one, the Biden-Harris administration pressured Facebook to censor Americans. Number two, Facebook censored Americans. Number three, Facebook throttled the Hunter Biden laptop story, the panel wrote. All right, so let's notice some things regarding censorship and the federal government. Let's think about the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights. Number one, the Bill of Rights is actually not a Bill of Rights at all. It is a list of prohibitions. It is a list of thou shalt nots to the federal government, telling the feds what it cannot do and what they may not do. That's what the Bill of Rights is. It is a list of prohibitions. No matter what you might think about speech, and even speech that is that might be off limits, the federal government has no say-so in the matter. It is a list of prohibitions to the federal government. That's number one, and that includes in the First Amendment speech, assembly, religion, redress of the government, all of that included. The federal government, no say-so. It's a list of prohibitions. Number two, what is interesting about that is that the federal government is not to be the watchdog regarding our freedom of speech. That was paramount to the Founding Fathers. The Constitution is given to us, guaranteeing us, that is by means of the Bill of Rights or the list of prohibitions, guaranteeing us that the federal government will never interfere in these things. And the feds are not to be the watchdog in these rights that we have. We have these rights. We've retained these rights. And in order to retain them, we recognize the federal government should stay out of. Now, that's something that the Democrats absolutely don't understand. They don't believe. They don't want. They act, and even the congressmen and senators act like they're abysmally ignorant about this. For example, we have a couple of comments here that is made. This is from Jerry Connolly, Democrat from Virginia. And he's been angry about Robert Kennedy. And Robert Kennedy has been, of course, out regarding COVID and how the government has throttled the information regarding COVID vaccines. And but so Jerry Connolly says, well, the federal government, public health measures are to protect lives, and the federal government is to be involved in that. Furthermore, he tells us the federal government is to protect us from misinformation. Now, let's just stop for a moment. This has been Barack Obama's big deal. He's talked about misinformation, disinformation for a long time. I want to ask this question: which totalitarian, despotic government has not had some kind of throttling of information based upon the fact that the people are going to be misinformed and disinformed from the media, from books, from what things they read, whatever it may be, from television, radio? What totalitarian government has not been concerned about misinformation going out to the people? This is the mark of all totalitarian governments, be they Nazism, fascism, communism, dictatorship, military dictatorship, whatever it may be. They have all from the top down controlled the flow of information to the populace. That is exactly how Barack Obama has talked for a long time, and that's exactly how Kamala Harris has talked. By the way, I suppose that Barack Obama's behind the scenes, and he is the one who's controlling our government at this particular point. Him and George Soros, Nancy Pelosi, those, because we know Joe Biden is just not doing it. He's not there. He's been AWOL for a long time, and that has been seen. But be that as it may, this is what the Democrats simply not only do not understand, they don't want to understand it, and they don't have any clue about the Bill of Rights, the list of prohibitions against the federal government. So that's one thing we need to note regarding the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. Now, I have an article in front of me here also this is by Betsy McGoy, and she quotes the Pew Research Center and a poll that was released July 20. This was last year. Now, think about this. She said that it has 70% of Democrats think the government should restrict what appears on social media. And that is a dramatic change from 5 years ago when a majority of Democrats supported a free marketplace of ideas. It's no wonder, she writes, considering the drumbeat of warnings from leftist politicians, the liberal media allies about disinformation, misinformation. But be warned, democracy cannot survive for long if one of the nation's two major political parties wants to put blinders on the public, limiting their access to information and canceling political opponents. That is a rigged system. The Biden administration is already censoring social media on a massive scale, putting blinders on all of us. That was written in 2023. So let's notice a couple of things about that. Number one, it's pointed out that 70% of Democrats want censoring of information. That absolutely is astounding to me, and it shows you who wants freedom in this country. We've heard the Democratic platform. We've read the Democratic platform. We heard their convention in which they talked about freedom and freedom of this and freedom of that. Their freedom is not the freedom or liberty of individuals to operate and to make decisions for themselves. Their freedom is to put enslaved half of America, to steal their earnings and give to another people, so they will call that freedom from want. Oh, okay, they're not wanting anything, they're not lacking anything, so they're free from want. That's not the kind of freedom, that's not even the usage of freedom that our founding fathers had in mind. Not to alleviate by force monies from my pocket to people over here. That's the kind of freedom they are talking about, and this is exactly the kind of misuse of freedom that they have in mind. The majority of Democrats want the stifling of information. That's number one, and that should scare everyone. So no wonder they don't care whether Kamala Harris has anything on her Facebook page or on her account on her website anything about her platform, anything about what she believes. They don't care. They don't care at all. They just want someone who they know is a totalitarian, who's a dictator, a despotic dictator. That's all they know. That's all they want. They want socialism. And that's the way the mainstream media rolls, and that's the way the Democratic, aka Socialist Party, rolls also. Number two, I want you to notice this. That means it is a rigged system already. If we have not the free flow of information, then we have a rigged system already. That's precisely not only what is the case, but shockingly, that's what Democrats also want. I was speaking with a Democrat not long ago, and I thought, you know how brainwashed these people are. He was saying, well, if Kamala Harris gets into a debate with Donald Trump, she's going to mop the floor with him because she's been a district attorney in San Francisco. She was the attorney general in the state of California. She was a senator from the state of California. She was a vice president. I thought, how blinded have we become? This is what the mainstream media has done. It has gone along, put blinders on. It's not simply not reporting material. It is putting blinders on people by reporting disinformation, misinformation themselves. And that's what the Democratic Party wants. Because she has got to where she is, not because of her character. We know her relationship with Willie Brown. Not because of her competence, but because she is a minority woman, and therefore they put her up into different positions. And so now people in the Democratic Party and the leadership are saying, we would like to have someone, I think Nancy Pelosi said this the other day, we need someone to be the president who is a woman. We need a woman up there. Okay, when Barack Obama came, a lot of Republicans said, well, you know what, if we vote for Obama over Bush, you know what, well, the people are going to realize in America that, we are not prejudiced against black people because we have a black president. So many, I thought, how ridiculous. That is ridiculous. You can't prove anything because now it has gotten worse. Racism or racial comments have gotten worse with Barack Obama, but what a reason to put someone up. That has nothing to do with it at all. People don't need to show that to show they're not racist. Now we have a woman. So now, like when the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre says, well, first thing she did when she got up to be the press secretary, well, I'm a woman, I'm a black woman, and I'm a lesbian. See, so they have so many different categories and subcategories. They will use that forever and ever, amen. And that's the reason Kamala Harris has got to anywhere where she is, not because of competence, not because of intelligence. You can see that when she speaks, but it is because of her skin color, her gender, etc. So that's what's going on right now in this country. And the Democrats apparently are just happy with it because they are actually on board with totalitarianism. So I want to notice something else. This is from last year's hearings in the Senate. This was a hearing witnessed by the name of D. John Sauer. This is put up by Betsy McGoy in the Epic Times in the article in which I mentioned the Pew Research poll. D. John Sauer said he's a special assistant attorney general for Louisiana, described preliminary findings by a federal judge that the Biden staff in the White House, the FBI, the Department of Health and Human Services, and almost every other executive department meet regularly, this was written last year, with social media executives and pressure them to remove or demote criticisms of Biden economic and energy policies. Say, I told you that it had nothing to do only with COVID-19. COVID-19 is simply the way they get in the foot in the door. We need to protect public health. No, don't worry about our health, congressmen and senators. We need to be seeing about that ourselves. We don't need the federal government in charge of that kind of thing because we see the incompetence that is going on there. So going on in the article, Biden family members, and even items that depict the First Lady in an unflattering way. They censored those remarks. That would be, at that time, of course, it would be Jill Biden. According to Sauer, millions of American voices have been silenced in violation of the First Amendment. Sauer cited some 18,000 communications from Team Biden to tech executives orchestrating a vast ongoing censorship operation. You see, this is not simply a small operation in which they said, all right, we don't want you to say something about COVID or censor the information about COVID. This is about the entire Democratic Party censoring information and rigging the election, because that's what it is. Now, I know that media giants and the tech organizations, they don't want you to talk on anything about a rigged election, as Donald Trump has continued to do when he's going around on the political stump talking about a rigged election. But I'm asking you the question, if we have such hardwired communication and thousands upon thousands, 18,000 communications between the Biden administration and the tech companies, which is a quasi-government organization at this point, censoring information, I ask every thinking American, which might exclude many Democrats, what exactly is it besides a rigged election? That is a rigged election. The same thing regarding the CIA, the FBI, individuals signing a statement saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was actually Russian disinformation. That itself, federal government pumping out disinformation. And that's who Barack Obama wants to be in charge of your information flow to one another. Absolutely incredible. He is a despot. They want despotism. They want a dictatorship. They want socialism, communism, Marxism is exactly what they want in this country. So, yet Democratic lawmakers, continuing with Betsy McGoy's article, were unfazed by this shocking evidence. It doesn't bother them, and hardly question the witness. The U.S. Constitution and the future of our democracy can be hanged. Representative Stacey Plaskett, Democrat from the Virgin Islands, laid out the Democratic Party's distorted interpretation of the First Amendment, insisting, well, not all speech is constitutionally protected, and hate speech is an example. All right, consider this for just a moment, Miss Plaskett from Virgin Islands. The key to the Bill of Rights is maybe not all speech is protected. That is, you can't go into a theater and yell fire. You can't publish against individuals. You can't publish things that are against individuals, and you can't do that. That is, you can be sued for those things. But the important thing is, that is, the federal government is not in charge of that area. It's not the federal government. They're not in charge of that. Slander, federal government's not in charge of it. Federal government, stay off. But that's something that the Democrats have never learned. But the Barack Obamas of the world, they're the ones who want it. And the same thing with Kamala Harris. She wants the stifling of information. They don't want a free country. They don't want a free flow of information. And the very first thing, the ground of a free government is free communication. So who should be in charge of misinformation and disinformation? Me, I am. You are. Read both sides, read other things, read and understand. I don't want anybody telling me what I should believe. As a matter of fact, I believe that regarding religion also. That's why I want a Bible, for example, just as an illustration, a Bible that is translated close to the original Greek and Hebrew of the Old Testament. Greek of the New, Hebrew of the Old. I want it close to a word-for-word translation. Why? Because I want to see what it says for myself. If someone comes up and says, well, the Bible teaches thus and so, I can see it does or does not. But I am the one responsible for that. That's misinformation. I will hear it. You know, the Roman Catholic Church has for centuries stifled information. People don't realize this, but the Roman Church is a communist-style government. It is a secular government. The Vatican is the smallest state, political entity in the world. And the Roman Catholic Church has been about, because it's a totalitarian, communistic-style government, not simply a religion. I tell you what, it makes me frustrated watching Fox News. They think, well, you're going to put a Catholic up there to represent Christian people. No, that represents communism, because that's what the Catholic Church is. The Catholic Church has for centuries burned the Bibles, burned the people who translated the Bibles, chained the Bibles to the pulpits, and now they say, well, the priest will say, well, I will be your Bible. They don't want the people to read the Bible. They want to tell them what the Bible says. What is that? It's stifling information. That's what our forefathers fled from when they founded this country. And that's exactly where the Roman Catholic Church is, and that's exactly where the Democratic Party, aka Socialist Party, wants to take America. Kamala Harris, she wants to stifle the free flow of information, censorship. And Americans need to stand up. And it is time to stand up, because Democrats are right on board with her. Many of them, 70% of Democrats, want the federal government to control the information that comes to you. How communistic can you be?